Hello friends, today we are going to discuss the grounds of eviction of a tenant as per section 6 of West Bengal Premises Tenancy Act 1997. So this act was enacted to provide the regulation of certain incidents of tenancy of premises happen in Calcutta, Howrah and some other areas in West Bengal. So as per the section 6 of West Bengal Premises Tenancy Act, there are only 12 grounds of eviction using which a landlord may initiate a process for eviction of a tenant. So which are those 12 grounds we will uh, discuss on the next slides. Okay. Yeah, so if you see here, section 6 is basically a tenant fortress. Okay, these are protection of tenant against eviction, and there are 12 gates or grounds are only 12 way a landlord may legally enter once he is has handed over the premises to the tenant, and each gate definitely is guarded by the burden of proof. Okay, so if you see here, the default rule is notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in any other law or any contract, no order or decree for recovery of the possession shall be made, except on a suit being instituted by the landlord. So a landlord cannot legally evict a tenant without obtaining a valid court order. So if we go back to the previous slide, so this is the tenant's fortress. Okay, and if you see in this picture, there are different gates, 1 2 3 different gates as marked. So this is just to show you that there are only 12 gates or 12 grounds uh, uh, for a landlord to re-enter his premises once there is a tenancy agreement and he has handed over the as per that agreement he has handed over the premises to the tenant. Okay, so now in the next slides we are going to discuss that what are those 12 grounds as per the section 6. So for your easy understanding, we have mapped the these 12 grounds or 12 gates in zone. So this for better understanding. So in the first zone we keep it tenant misconduct. Okay, so in tenant misconduct triggered by the active breach by the tenant, and there are subletting, rent default, TPA violations, immoral use, deterioration of the premises, and nuisance. These are the six grounds as per section 6 under this tenant misconducts. In the zone 2 we keep it the landlord's genuine need. Okay, so this would be triggered by the property owners based on circumstances, and the ground would be rebuilding or reconstruction of the premises, bona fide personal use, and armed force personal use. And then in the zone 3 we keep it abandonment or alternatives, where this is again triggered by the lack of tenant utilization, where a tenant notice to quit is failed by the tenant, tenant has acquired his own house, and then the ground would be premises is lock and key for a long time. Okay, so in the next few slides we are going to discuss on the sections for each ground. Okay, yeah, so if you consider this tenant misconduct and breach, that there are six grounds triggered by the tenant's active violation of contract, property rights, or statutory duties. Okay, section 6A, 6B, 6F, 6G, 6H, and 6I. These are the section as per West Bengal Premises Tenancy Act. So we are going to discuss more details about this sections. Uh, so if we talk about the ground 1 and section 6A, it's saying that for a tenant, if subletting, assigning, or parting with possession, it needs a written consent of the landlord. So oral consent is insufficient. It means if the tenant is going to subletting this premises, he must need a written consent from the landlord. If without a written consent, if you're subletting the property of premises to someone else, so then it would be considered as a eviction ground, and under section 6A the landlord can initiate a eviction against the tenant. The ground 2, it's default rent payment. This is under section 6B. So specifically triggered by default of 3 months within a 12 months period, or 3 rental period within 3 years if the rent is not monthly. And the important part here is that it does not require a consecutive non-payment. So if you maybe if the tenant miss a payment in month 2, maybe on month February, then June, and then again October, so this would be also considered as a ground of eviction. So it's not mandatory have to be 3 consecutive months. Even any 3 months in a period of 12 months or 1 year, that will be considered as a eviction ground. Okay. Now, if we go to the next slides, so then statutory and legal violations. So it comes under ground 6, section 6F. So under section 6F, this is Contractual Transfer Property Act 1882, section 108. So there, clause M, using the property in a destructive or injurious manner. Clause O is erecting a permanent structure without consent of the landlord. And clause P is failing to notify landlord of third party encroachment. If there is a third party encroachment in front of the premises, then the tenant must inform the landlord. If he does not do so, then it would consider as a eviction ground under section 6F. And then the landlord may again initiate a proceedings of eviction to the tenant. Then ground 7 is section 6G. It's a immoral or illegal use triggered if tenant uses any part of the premises to be used illegal or immoral person, then this would be considered as a eviction ground as well. Now in the next slide, what is in the ground 8? So in the ground 8 or section 6H, there is a material deterioration if triggered by the waste, negligence, or default by the tenant that result in a material physically deterioration of the property and the condition. Then and he does not inform about this to the landlord, then this would consider as a eviction ground, and under section 6H, again eviction can be initiated by the landlord. Ground 9 would be section 6I, which is nuisance or annoyance triggered by the misconductor of the tenant, anyone residing with them, that creates a nuisance or cause annoyance to the neighbor, including the landlord. This would be another eviction ground 9. Okay. Now we will discuss the landlord's genuine need. We put it in the zone 2. There are 3 grounds triggered by the landlord's legitimate bona fide requirement to reoccupy or reconstruct the premises. Okay, so this is under section 6C, 6D, and 6K. So we will discuss these grounds in details. So structural overhaul and bona fide requirement. So ground 3. Okay, so one part I missed to tell you that if you see here in the previous section, so we have ground 1, then ground 2, and then there is ground 6, then 7 and 8, 9. Okay, and then now if you see, we in the zone 2 we keep the ground 3 here, which is 3, 4 and 5 here. So ground 3 would be section 6C, where a premises where a landlord rebuild or substantial addition or alteration wants to do a rebuild or substantial addition or alteration of the premises, and that cannot be done without premises being vacated. So that would be a valid ground for the owner for the eviction of tenant. Okay, then ground 4, which is section 6D. Again, this bona fide personal requirement. The landlord reasonably required these premises for his own occupations. Is sometimes the landlord offer the premises on the tenancy agreement to the tenant, but then maybe after 6 months or maybe down the line, he might needs the premises that somebody, his son, daughter, or any relatives, they need to stay in that own premises. So then that would be, if that is a genuine case, then that could be considered as a ground of eviction as well. Okay, but there is a geographical condition is there. The landlord must not have another premises in that particular locality within the 10 kilometers of that radius. Okay, and as I said, that legal standby would must be reasonable and genuine, not a mere pretext. Okay, so then some roadmap is given in there, just showing the 10-kilometer, within the 10-kilometer radius and the same municipality, the landlord should not have the another premises where he can stay. Now this is the armed force provision. So there is a specific provision for the armed force persons. It's called ground 11 section 6K, a special protection for the member of armed force of the Union of India who requests the premises for the occupation of their family. So that is immediately a ground for a eviction of the tenant. Okay. And then there would be some statutory checklist on this. The landlord must produce the certificate from the prescribed authority under Section 7 Indian Soldiers Litigation Act 1925, Litigation Act 1925. Must clarify the landlord is serving under special conditions, sections 3 of the 1925 Act, and must clarify the landlord is currently posted in a non-family area. So these are some statutory checklist which need to be fulfilled under this ground 11 on section 6K. Now we'll discuss the zone 3 or amendment or alternative. There are three there are some grounds triggered when the tenant effectively vacates, acquires alternative property, or lock up the premises without the use. So these are section 6E, 6J, and 6L. So we discuss more on this. So yeah, ground 5, it's saying section 6E. Okay, the tenant violating gives a notice to quit, but he fails to vacate the possession. So this could be another ground for eviction. Then ground 10, which is section J, if the tenant acquire a house, construction, or allotted house or flat, anything, including where 1 year of moratorium for vacating. So he will get 1 year time to vacate that previous premises. Okay, so this is under ground 10. And then ground 12, and the last ground would be section 6L, which is saying that the trigger when the premises is kept under lock and key, not residing for 10 months. If the tenant is not residing in that premises where the tenancy, he has made a tenancy agreement, but he is not staying there for more than 10 months time, so that's a valid reasonable ground, because this preventing the hardening of empty property by blocking landlords from letting actual uses. Okay. So if a tenant has made a tenancy agreement, so he must stay or use that premises. So this is the ground 12 and section 6L. And there are some time bound threshold, as we have discussed, for the rent default or ground 2. The 3 defaults in a 12 months period, or 3 periods in 3 years time, would be considered as a valid ground. Then for ground floor is a bona fide need, and the landlord should not have another premises to stay in within the 10 kilometers of the radius of his premises which he has offered to the tenant. And then ground 10, where tenant has acquired a property and it's 1 year time that he must vacate after acquiring that house. And then ground 12, lock and key, it's saying the duration is 10 months. If the premises is lock and key conditions for 10 months, then it would be considered as a valid ground for eviction. And um, the landlord may initiate a proceedings against the tenant to for eviction. So this was time bound thresholds in few grounds of the section 6. And now um, this is the final slides, and where it says that the civil judge and the burden of proof. So section 6, if we talk about the section 6, it provides a exhaustive list, and no eviction outside these 12 grounds is legally permissible regardless of any private tenancy agreement he or she may have. Okay, and the ultimate rule would be the section 6 is the tenant fortress, and there are 12 grounds or gates are the only 12 ways a landlord may legally re-enter in his own premises, and each ground is guarded by the burden of proof. So that was the ultimate rule. I hope this discussion help you to understand the what are the evictions ground for as per West Bengal Premises and Tenancy Act, Section 6.